Alright, what's going on, guys? My name is Erik Hinch, and on Saturday I took a 22nd out of 308 players at the West Allis, Wisconsin Regional with pure Fluffals. They were giving out 48 invites, and I ended up with 22nd. Went 6-1-2 after 9 rounds, and wasn't expecting to do very well. I've been playing the deck for like 3 years, but it's not exactly a meta deck, so I figured I'd go like X3 drop and just trade a lot, but that obviously didn't happen. So let's get right back in, or get into the deck profile. So you start out with 3 copies of our Stratos, Fluffle Dog. When he's normal summoned or special from the hand, you get to add a Fluffle or an Edgem Sabers from the hand or from the deck to your hand. Don't really need to explain this one too much. He's an Earth. That's the only other relevant thing. So, yep. Next, we've got 2 copies of Fluffle Bear. Bear sets Toy Vendor from the deck, which does evade Ash, by the way, and that did come up a couple times in the tournament. The other effect that comes up once every like 20 games is that you can tribute him from the field to add Polymerization from the graveyard. Like I said, that comes up like once every other tournament, but it is a thing for like the end game. Next, we got 2 copies of Fluffle Wings. Wings is amazing for draw power, but he's a hard once per turn. So this is the card that's going to get ashed a lot. For anybody that actually knows how the deck runs, this is the card that's going to get ashed. A lot of people will, if they don't know the deck, they'll ash Foolish Burial Goods or Toy Vendor even. But yeah, so definitely good draw power though, in combination with Bear and Wings. Next, we got 2 copies of Fluffle Penguin. When you fuse with Penguin for a Fright Fur, you can draw 2 and discard 1. And when he's on the field, you can special summon a Fluffle from your hand. Card's good for setting up chain links to evade back row. For example, if you got Tiger on board and you're gonna pop back row and they've got Strike, you can set up chain link 1 Tiger, target the cards. Chain link 2 Penguin to draw 2, discard 1, and they can only strike the Penguin. They can't strike the Tiger due to the chain links. So next we've got the one-ofs. We've got 1 copy of Owl, Cat, and Sheep. Same thing with Cat as Penguin, where you can dodge things with the chain links. When you fuse with Cat, you can add a Polymerization from your grave to your hand. Good for extending plays. All of these I'd play at 1, and no more, no less. Sheep is great for link summoning. You'll probably end up doing summoning Dog, doing some plays, and then summoning out Sheep, link summoning 2 for Mrs. Radiant. And Owl is your out to things like Nat Beast. More relevant, I guess, example would be Anti-Spell Fragrance, where you can normal summon it, pay 500 to Polymerization, and destroy cards that way. Otherwise, when you summon it, you can add Polymerization from your deck. On to the Edgemps. We play 1 copy of Edgem Sabers and 3 copies of Edgem Chain. Sabers has become a lot better recently with the Plague Spreader effect that it has. You put a card on the top of the deck to summon it. It's become more relevant for link summoning, I've noticed, in these last few tournaments since Master Rule 4. And we have no way to search Edgem Chain, so you got to play 3 copies. It's one of the best searchers in the deck. It searches out Fright for Fusion, Fright for Factory. And yeah, don't really need to say anything else on that. We do play 3 copies of King of the Swamp. King of the Swamp, you can discard it to add Polymerization from your deck to your hand, and it can substitute for one of the Edgems in your Fright Fur cards. So if you can't get to a Sabers or a Chain, anything like that, you can use this and still go on with your fusion plays. We play 1 Maxi. Don't really need to explain that. And then 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird, which I had to borrow from a friend. Shout out to Drew Eichhoff. Thanks for letting me use those, man. They really put in some work. So that's it for the monsters. I believe it's 23. So onto the spells. Start out with 3 Foolish Burial Goods. I don't really need to say much on this. It's basically your Rhoda. So you send Toy Vendor to the grave, and that adds a Fluffle from your deck to your hand. I've seen some people play less than 3 with this, and I really don't agree with that. There's so many things you can do with this to set up fusion plays, to get your searches going, that you want to see this card no matter what. The other three we've got in the deck is Toy Vendor. Searches out your cards, enables your wings play. Sometimes you can get cheeky and draw a Fluffal and just summon it and get free summons that way. I don't really need to say much else. We do play 2 copies of Polymerization and then 1 Fusion Substitute. And I've liked this ratio for a long time. This is one of the original decks to actually play Fusion Sub before Fusion Sub Zoo was a thing. You search this out mid combo after you probably fused once or twice. You ditch it with King of the Swamp can search this because it always counts as Polymerization. Owl can search it, and if you don't OTK with this deck, which does happen, you know, with hand traps and everything being a thing, you're probably still going to end up with like 0 to 2 cards in your hand going into next turn, and this helps recur some of that lost hand advantage, and I've liked it for a while. You don't really work with it that much anyway. 2 copies of Fright for Fusion. Basically your Miracle Fusion for the deck. Banish from the field or graveyard to summon Frightfur. You can banish all of your materials if you want, summon Frightfur Wolf and attack a million times. Searchable off of Edgem Chain, as is our 1 copy of Frightfur Factory. And this card, you gotta play it at 1. If you can't get a fusion summon off any other way, then this is the other way that you can do it. I have had to do some cheeky things with it where I would play Ghost Ogre, so I would activate Factory, banish a fusion spell from the graveyard, probably Fright for Fusion, and then I would Ghost Ogre the Fright for Factory and destroy it. And when it's destroyed, you add a banished Fright for Fusion back to your hand, and that was what I needed to get through. That never happens, but people forget about the adding from the banish pile, and they'll destroy it themselves a lot, and you can do it that way. Next we play 2 copies of Fusion Recovery. This is the only card in the main deck that I regret playing. I've loved this card for a long time, but I didn't see it at all throughout the entire tournament, and I sided it out every single time without fail. I don't know, it was pretty win more, and I didn't really need it. There were other cards that I wish this could have been. Generic spell trap removal, board removal, you know, Dark Hole Regeki, Ash even, you know. I would have played those cards over this if I could make the deck again. We played 1 copy of Twin Twisters, 1 Upstart, and 1 Foolish Burial. Don't need to explain this. Generic spell trap removal, and Foolish Burial enables some things. It's one last combo piece if you can't quite get there for your wings play. You can send wings or another Fluffal from the deck to the graveyard. Send Sabers, send Chain, send King of the Swamp. Yeah, so that's it for the main deck. I believe it's 40 cards. So onto the extra deck. We've got 2 copies of Tiger. This is usually the ratio. This is a ratio I've played with for a long time. I don't really need to explain it much. It helps your Frightfurs get big, blows up cards when you summon it, and that's about it. Next we play 1 copy of Sheep. Sheep has kind of fallen off in relevancy, but it still comes up when you play against decks like Burning Abyss, which I did, and I did summon it out against them. Or if you just need a wall turn 1 and you haven't got any other really great plays, you can just kind of, you know, summon it in defense and it'll defer some attacks. So we got 2 copies of Kraken. This is the ratio that's been working with me the best. A lot of people don't realize this yet, so you can send a monster that your opponent controls to the graveyard. If it does that, it can't attack directly that turn. But if you fusion with this for Sabertooth and bring out the Kraken again with Sabertooth's effect, that restriction is gone and it can attack again. And Kraken plus Sabertooth is exactly 8k with just those 2 monsters. So a lot of people don't realize that, and they'll just kind of get blindsided. Speaking of Sabertooth, we've got 3 copies. This deck's become a lot more Sabertooth Turbo since Master Rule 4 came into effect, and a lot of times you're going to be returning returning Sabertooth with Fusion Substitute. I found myself running through all 3 of these and then needing another one afterwards. So yeah. Then for the last Frightfurs, we got 1 Wolf and 1 Daredevil. Never went into Daredevil, but it was there in case I played against something like True Dracos, where I just needed a naturally beefy Frightfur card. And Wolf won me a few games with the sneaky OTKs, you know, attack 4 times, and had a few good games with that. For Link Monsters, we play 1 Mrs. Radiant and 1 Decode. This was working for me great all day. I went into Mrs. Radiant maybe like twice, but Decode Talker won me quite a few games, actually. I'll get into one of the scenarios with this when I go through the matchups, but yeah. For Xseeds, didn't play any of these cards. Never had a reason to go into any of them. Almost went into this against Burning Abyss, but I was able to sneak through with game without it. So yeah, I don't know. They're there, but I never had a reason to go into them. So that's it for the extra deck. Onto the side deck. I'll try and push through that pretty quick. Played 1 copy of Ogre and 1 Ash. I only have 1 Ash, otherwise I would have played more. And I don't know. The side deck I would have changed a few things, but these cards did work well. Next we played 2 Chaos Hunters. Round 1 against Mermails, I did summon this, and he went into Trishula and tried to banish everything. And so then he just basically passed turn when he realized he couldn't banish any of my cards. This card was good against Trickstars, and I think I played it against Spirals as well to stop their cards, I guess. But 1 Book of Eclipse saved me against Trickstars 1 game, and I think that I also played it against Burning Abyss, and they weren't able to exceed, go into Beatrice, anything like that. Regeki and Darkhole, don't really need to explain these. Generic board removal. Won't go over that anymore. 2 copies of Magical Springs. These cards were amazing against Pendulum Magicians, especially when they search out the Pendulum Graph cards. I don't even care if you can't destroy their cards anymore. You just, with this deck, you draw 3, discard 1, draw 4, discard 1, and you're gonna see enough cards to push through. And that's what happened. I played 3 Pendulum Magicians, and the card was king against all of them. 2 Twin Twisters. Generic spell trap removal. Again, don't need to really go over it. System down. Played 2 copies. Played against ABCs, sided them in, didn't see them. That was really the only time that happened. Then we played 2 barriers. This deck does see enough that so it's a go second deck. If you sneak through with game 1, they're gonna make you go first because you're an OTK deck. So you can generally see enough cards in your opening hand with the draw power from Penguin, from Toy Vendor to kind of see some defensive cards, and this did win me games against Pendulum Magicians, against ABC. Yeah, still good. So onto the matchups. Round 1, again, I went against Mermails and we tied. Round 2, we went against Pendulum Magicians and we took that one 2-1. Nothing really significant happened from those games, but that was the start. Round 3, I went against Spirals and we won 2-0. He opened with Resort game 1, and I draw unlocked him, and he normal summoned the drone and just set a warning and pass turn. I opened the 1 of Twin Twister and sacked the Resort warning and was able to push for game. Round 4, we played against ABCs. I opened up Droll literally every game. Opened it turn 1, game 1, and then drew it for turn that same game. It was really nutty. Droll and Lock put in so much work. Round 5, we played against Pendulum Magicians. That was my second tie of the day. We had a mishap with Omega. I took game 1 after a really long game 1, and then he took game 2 in time, which was really frustrating. Round 6, we played against Spirals, and that was my 1 loss of the day. This guy got 8th though, and he was a really great opponent. So shout out to you, Romello. Like I said, it was great playing against you, man, and I look forward to seeing you in Atlanta. Round 7, we played against Burning Abyss. I got it 2-1. Game 2, he got Vanity's Fiend on me, and I realized I didn't side any board removal, and so I just didn't have an out to Vanity's Fiend, and I just scooped it up. But we got it in Game 3. So round 8, played against Trickstars. We took that one 2-1. I thought the dream was dead when he opened nuts with like double light stage, reincarnation. I had a decent hand to start, but then he reincarnation, and I drew this is the one time I drew both of the fusion recoveries and like Foolish Burial. There was nothing good there. But yeah, it was a crazy games 2 and 3 though. I was able to take it. Then round 9 we played against Pendulum Magician. This one I took that one 2-0. He opened Desires and I drolled after that. He set up Scales, Pendulum summoned 2 out. Went into Tornado Dragon and tried to pop his I think it's a double Iris that searches the Pendulum Graph card. So he popped the Magician and tried to search. It was like, hey man, we're under draw. In which case, and then he just set one pass turn. Then this was the one that we had a game that I was able to banish for a game with Frightful Wolf. He had Ghost Ogre in hand, and I knew he had the Ghost Ogre because he got confused about Toy Vendor effect. I just activated the Toy Vendor, and he tried to Ghost Ogre right away. I explained to him that he needed to activate the effect first. Then he Cosmic Cycloned it, but I knew he had the Ghost Ogre in hand, and so I was able to summon a couple times, remove the rest of his back row, and he Ghost Ogred. So he Ghost Ogred the Tiger when I tried to pop his back row. Got rid of that, and then I banished 4 for Frightful Wolf with Frightful Fusion, and he read the card. His face just dropped, and he's like, "This doesn't activate, does it?" And I said no, and just attack for game. One thing I did want to share though against the first Spiral player that I played against. So early on in the turn, I did Toy Vendor effect, drew a dog, and summoned the dog. So I was able to do a whole bunch of plays off of that. Went through a bunch of fusions, and I needed. Eventually, I had 2 fusions on board. I had Sabretooth and Tiger, but that wasn't enough for game. I still had Fright for Fusion in hand. And I hadn't used my normal summon yet, so I had to normal summon the bear that I had in hand as well. And he said, "Hey man, you already normal summoned," and so I had to argue with him on that point. And eventually he conceded that I hadn't normal summoned yet. I explained the Toy Vendor play, so I linked 3 for Decode Talker, which looks really bad. But then I banished with Fright for Fusion and summoned the wolf. And just attacked a bunch, and that was what I needed to get for game. So Decode Talker and Fright for Wolf have been coming in pretty clutch. I think I did that play with Decode like 3 times. So yeah, main things I took away from the event were that Draw Unlock is insane. No one is playing D-Barrier right now, obviously, so that you're able to sneak in some pretty easy Game 1 wins. I definitely would play the board wipes, or at least more Spell or Trap removal, or the Ash, instead of the fusion recoveries. Then, for anyone that's wondering about siding out, usually when I sided out, I would take out the recoveries, the Foolish Burial, and the Upstart. One time I did side 7 cards, in which I took out those 4, and then 1 Edgemp Chain, 1 King of the Swamp, and 1 Foolish Burial Goods. Only because I play 3 copies of those things, and it did sacrifice a little bit of consistency, but the side cards that I got from it did help me get the game. So yeah, that's really it. Shout out, if I can give a shout out to everybody at Eau Claire Games and Arcade. You guys are awesome, and I think 4 of us got our invites that day. It was great. Shout out to everybody at Gnome Games in Green Bay. Miss you guys. And again, shout out to Drew for lending me the Draw Unlocks. Those definitely put in work, and I wouldn't have got that record if I didn't. And again, shout out to Romello. You're a great opponent, man. All right, Thanks and have a good one, guys. Bye.